Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash. This is the Ash Quest show. And by golly, I can't do the whole episode with that accent. I thought about it. I did think about doing another accent, but as promised, the year is 1993, and TSR has just released what some may dismiss as the Dungeons and Dragons answer to HeroQuest. This is Dragon Strike, featuring a hyper-reality VH video inside the box and part of the Adventure Vision game series. Whatever that is, 2 to 6 players aged 10 to adult can engage in awesome tabletop scenarios that are almost nothing like what you see on the cover of the box, but are still really, really cool. I actually really like Dragon Strike. There's going to be a lot of people that dismiss it as a HeroQuest poor imitation or some sort of money grab, but it is a really good game in its own right. It is highly extensible. You could create expansions for it, custom quests. There's a lot of content that comes with the base game and a lot of potential, and I don't know that that potential was ever fully realized. Now, according to Wikipedia, the game did sell very well. It sold out of its initial print run of 100,000 copies, with orders for 50,000 more from various stores. But the success of this product was compromised by overprinting. The CEO of TSR at the time, Lorraine Williams, opted to do a reprint of 150,000 copies rather than 50,000. The extra 100,000 orders did not appear, and the excess board games sat in a warehouse. They were eventually sold at deeply discounted clearance rates, as low as $1 a copy, which I have seen people claim that they were able to get this for a single dollar way back, and the overall profitability of the product just sank into nothingness. Important to know that there is a 2002 game called Dragon Strike produced by Hasbro that has absolutely nothing, zero to do with this, and that game looks very silly. This is, however, an introduction to Dungeons & Dragons. It is an entry-level, friendly, tabletop roll-to-move experience that is a bit reminiscent of HeroQuest and Dark World. Now that I have the lid of the box open, I can kind of show you the additional images on the side. We have some painting examples, and we have illustrations of all of the monsters and heroes that come with this game. There are different things that you can do in Dragon Strike that you can't do in HeroQuest, not without homebrewing, of course, and these differences really lend themselves to a different kind of gameplay experience. Of course, the game is an introduction to what is basically Dungeons & Dragons groundwork, and it is kind of meant to serve as a gateway, but the game in and of itself has plenty of content. We have not one, but 2 gameplay boards, and they're double-sided, and a full campaign of 16 adventures. And the rules for the Dragon's Egg, which is a solo adventure and doesn't include a map, can be expanded upon to make a DM-less experience. Anyway, welcome to my retro unboxing of the game. If you were to buy this brand new or somehow get your hands on a sealed copy, you won't see the components presented quite as they are here because all of the tiles have been punched out. All of the miniatures have been unsprued. A lot of the components are used. There's a little bit of damage to the cardboard sections. But this is my copy of the game, and as such, it has a few extra minis thrown in with it as well. Dragon Strike comes with a map book as well as an adventures book, and these 2 books work in tandem. Instead of being combined to one effective resource, you've actually got 2 things to look through. You get a summary of the 16 adventures here on page 1 of the adventures book, as well as what difficulty level they are, and how many suitable heroes for each, as well as the number of heroes that are recommended to play. Now, I did mention before that this game is for 2 to 6 players. You can play one of the adventures solo, and you can build off of that to make your own further solo adventures. So really, it should have said 1 to 6. But I hear you asking, what do you mean 6 players? Well, you can actually have up to 5 hero characters. Neuron's Seal and the Prisoner, as well as Darkfire's Lair, are actually designed to be played with 4 to 5 heroes. These are just suggestions more than anything. You don't have to have any specific number of heroes to play any of these. As you would expect, the more heroes you have, the easier the adventure will be to complete, though. We'll take a closer look at the adventure book in a moment. Yeah, it does strike me as a bit odd why they didn't just go with the HeroQuest convention as far as making quest books, because the map book here is a map on the upper page and a map on the lower page, and these are for 2 different quests. And for an adventure like Against the Giant, there's only 2 pages. So, I mean, you could have just printed all of this in one resource, just like this. It would have worked out. The instruction book is fine. It's actually very informative. It's easy to find rules. Not one of the worst instruction books by far that I've ever encountered. And yes, there are some notoriously bad instruction books out there. And they had a lot of opportunity to fail, being that this was a gateway to D&D, and it does use some common conventions found in D&D. We have our Dragon Strike VHS. If you can get your hands on a copy of this, it's worth watching. You could also just scour YouTube. I don't think anybody cares, but it's crazy. It contains classic moments, such as this one.
Are we going to stand here talking all night, or are we going to nail Teraptus?
They are not mutually exclusive options. If we don't nail Teraptus, the night will never end.
And also this one.
Wizard and warrior, you see a shadow on the wall. It looks like a minotaur.
Let's go toast him. Let's save our strength for something we really need to fight.
And of course, who could forget this zinger?
Our cause will serve the good of nature. The only way to...
Kindly cast a pause video spell.
Oh, Dragon Strike. Never change, because you can't, because you don't really exist anymore. By the way, for you hardcore collectors, there are some Dragon Strike comic books produced by Marvel Comics. Oh, Marvel, you traitor. You did the winter special for HeroQuest, and you did Dragon Strike. Anyway, I scored this on eBay. Here's the UPC for those who might need that information. Approved by the Comics Code Authority. I tell you, back in the day, these are the golden ages comics for me. Look at these. Look at these advertisements here. Now, this comic didn't come with the board game. I had to find this separately. I didn't even know that there was a comic until way after I got the board game. Oh man, I remember these advertisements though. They were in all the comics that I was reading back then. Wikipedia says that there's a few books for Dragon Strike as well, like one book for each hero. I don't know if maybe they mean comic books. More stuff for me to hunt down, I suppose. You actually have 6 different heroes that come with the game. 2 of them are thieves. Don't ask me why. They have male and female thieves, but their stats are the exact same. And by the way, these are like the character boards that each player will have. It tells you what your speed is, which for the thief is 6 spaces. They can move up to 6 spaces on their turn. Attack with a D8, and that's their dagger. Their armor class is 5, and it's leather armor. Saving versus magic requires a roll of a D8. Finding and disarming traps, a D12. Finding secret passages, a D10. Feats of dexterity, you can roll a D12, and for a feat of strength, you can roll a D8. You have the starting equipment of lockpicking tools, rope, a bullwhip, a grappling hook, food, and a mirror. A roll equal to or better than your target's armor class equals success. And for the saves and finding of passages and traps and feats of dexterity and strength, a roll of 6 or better equals success. So the die type here is really what determines the odds being in your favor or not. You have 6 hit points, and the game came with these plastic clips that you would slide over the character card and simply use to keep track of how many hit points your character had. And yes, you can say hit points freely because these are Dungeons and Dragons styled stats. It kind of stops at armor class and saves though, because we don't have the stir, dex, whis, con, cha, int, or whatever your preferred order is depending on which edition of D&D you enjoyed. We also have the warrior, the elf, the dwarf, and the wizard. Very easy for 5 heroes to play all the classic archetypes, and play against the evil wizard player, Teraptus. This copy of the game comes with its consumer response card, which can be sent to TSR Incorporated's marketing department. I'm going to write them and tell them what an awful job they did overproducing the game. We've also got this lovely summer-fall 1993 TSR mini catalog, featuring hits such as Dungeons & Dragons game, Dragon Quest. See, when I think of entry-level board games that are supposed to get you interested in Dungeons & Dragons, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is in the same catalog as another game that's supposed to get you interested in Dungeons & Dragons. There's got to be a subset or group of people that prefer to play these tabletop editions that have simplified rule sets and limitations in how you move and what you can do to act versus the theater of the mind style. I mean, there's got to be some small niche community centered around board games where there's just tiles and dice and miniatures that move and attack using, say, combat dice. Maybe even there's more than one board game in this tiny niche genre. Who knows? Maybe we'll never know. If only there was a community out there. We've also got some books here published by TSR, supplements for advanced Dungeons & Dragons like the Book of Artifacts and the Card Master Adventure Design Deck, game accessories like the Forgotten Realms, the Code of the Harpers, and the 2nd edition campaign setting. Lots of really cool stuff in here. Lots of really neat stuff to be on the hunt for if you are a person who has money or the child of parents who have money in 1993 and they support your nerdy board game hobby. Ooh, it's Dark Sun stuff. Dark Sun is really cool. Spelljammer, Ravenloft, amazing, whatever the heck that ended up being, and Buck Rogers. You know, I've pecked through this catalog before. I don't think I realized there was a Buck Rogers game. And on the very last page, and easiest to see if you're just really quickly looking around at the catalog, Dungeons & Dragons, the game. If you like Dragon Strike the video and Dragon Strike the game, find out how your adventure continues. Flip it around and you can join the Dragon Knights and become a member of the official fan club for heroes like you. Get ready for a year packed with more fun and more adventure. As a new member, you would receive the initial membership package of a Dragon Knights t-shirt. Now that's something I need to be on the hunt for. The official membership wallet ID card, and a brilliant 12-sided gem transparent die, a 75 cents value. You'll also receive a superbly sculpted paintable warrior miniature by Ral Partha when you become a member. Plus, during the year, you'll get 2 colorful special edition wall posters, a $10 value, and 2 issues of the Dragon Knights comic book newsletters, featuring new adventures, hot new game accessories, tips on how to improve your gameplay, and much more. Now, the new adventures part really interests me. Does anybody have Dragon Knights comic book newsletters out there? Can I find these on eBay? I'm going to look. More Dragon Strike adventures. The last promo material thing I'm going to look at is this advertisement flyer for the simply awesome, easy-to-master Dungeons & Dragons game, as well as a reminder that Dragon Quest exists, which is a slightly closer to the D&D experience game than Dragon Strike, and the classic Dungeon game. Now, I'm okay with Dungeon. I kind of like Dungeon, but I can tell you now that this is not representative whatsoever of Dungeon, so that's pretty hilarious. On sale now at book, game, and hobby stores everywhere. Dragon Strike does come with a GM screen that flips open, and it very usefully tracks all of the HP of the monsters that you are currently using out on the board. It tells you what you can do on a monster's turn, a hero's turn. It reminds you of the hero actions. So just with this up and the adventure books behind it, you can remind each player what they can do behind the screen. All of your non-actions are covered here as well. How to move, how to attack checks, sight, clear shot, the overall monster table, special features of the Death Knight, the Troll, the Evil Wizard, the Fire Elemental, and the Man Scorpion. Yes, it's really called a Man Scorpion. The Dragon, which I can see the importance of putting that here since the dragon can appear in all of the quests. And basically how to start running your adventure right away, and some reminders on what to do as the Dragon Master. A lot of information, extremely useful, and pretty decent artwork on the flip side. Nothing to scoff at, really. It's just fine, and all the monsters here have a passing resemblance to the monster miniatures and what's on the cards. It's fine. It's not as epic as Mentor pointing towards the heroes with a stern look on his face and tricking everybody into thinking that he's actually Zargon for 30 years. This game also features doors, but it doesn't have open doors. In order to say that a door is opened, you simply turn it on its axis, what would be its hinge, and then if you see these turned doors on the tiles on the board, it means that they're open. It's a pretty simple concept. More games could do that. We have a number of these tokens that represent things on the board as well as different player statuses. So we've got bonfires, both lit and put out, which is a feature I really like. And then the invisible entity. It's kind of funny they opted to remain the clothes and the helmet and sword. I mean, it's just practical to have this to represent your invisibility, but it's funny that they illustrated it. Statuses such as Charmed and Darkness and Camera Blur. You've got fire tiles because there are things that can catch fire in this game and the fire could spread. Whirlwind. That's not a boulder. It's a rock. Cave entrance. Now, I wanted to make a crack about how there were not even any horses in this game, and the cover of the box shows knights on horses, but there are actually horses in the game. There's a bit of a carriage that's used in a couple of the quests for escort missions, and this sort of thing is really fun. It's really different to see something like this in a game that's like this. You get an almost standard set of D&D dice. You get your D12, D8, D10, All of your treasure chests are represented by tiles rather than miniatures, but you could proxy your miniatures. Okay, all of the miniatures, speaking of, are under this right side shield of cardboard. And like I said, they've already been de-sprued, and they're a bit jumbled up right now. I don't have them in any sort of protective thing, which I actually am surprised at myself for not having them in anything protective. You've got different colors for different kinds of monsters. Purple means hero. Green means common. Gray is reserved for what I'm going to call the stronger than common monsters. And then red is for the unique monsters and entities that are the strongest in the game. There's not really like an in-game convention to follow. It's just a pattern that I noticed. This is Darkfire. This is a dragon sculpt that is already on a very HeroQuest-esque base. You could use this for HeroQuest. I would prefer to use a Sarnil. The size of that dragon and the overall design is just much better, and it fits the aesthetic. But this dragon, he's not terrible. He fits on the board. He does what he's supposed to do. The wing, by the way, is removable because a lot of these miniatures are multi-part. Storing him with the wings on, however, doesn't seem to be a risky move at all. He's fine. He's been fine. He'll continue to be fine. You'll notice I have a second dragon in here, and that's because I got extra minis so that I could homebrew stuff with Dragon Strike, which is something I'd love to explore more on the channel whenever there's a huge lull in HeroQuest news and activities. We've got gargoyles. They're not nearly as fearsome as the... What is the HeroQuest gargoyle actually? A Khorne, like Blood Reaver, Bloodletter, Blood Champion, something like that. These guys are a lot more like actual decorative statues that could be used in non-evil dungeon places. But I like them all the same. These are Death Knights, and they're probably my favorite enemies in the game just because I like skeletal soldiers so much, and these guys look like extra powerful skeletal soldiers. They're probably also the closest in scale to the HeroQuest minis, so the easiest to use in HeroQuest and homebrew HeroQuest stuff for 2. And for some reason, I only have one man scorpion. You'd think I'd have more than one. I think it's because the other... Oh, no, I have 2. For some reason, I only have 2 man scorpions. You'd think I'd have 3. No, but only 1 is supposed to come with the game, just like 1 dragon. You're also supposed to get 1 fire elemental. I got a second one so that I would be able to homebrew more stuff, but this guy's kind of goofy. He's a bit lazily made, but he still gets the job done. There was just enough thought put into him. They weren't just like set it and forget it. They were like, let's make something. It's more as if the designer tried, but they were unskilled, than it is the designer was unskilled and didn't try and just wanted to print money. The evil wizard actually has a name. This is Teraptus, and Teraptus has his own deck of cards. So instead of like the evil wizard spells or chaos magic, dread magic, you've got Teraptus spells. 2 of them, just in case I need to make a scenario where he splits himself into 2, and every time you attack the fake one, it disappears, and the real one gets an extra turn. This game comes with giants, although the miniatures for them are not quite to scale as to what I would consider to be gigantic versus the other heroes. That seems to be a running gag with the miniatures in this game. Still, they are pretty big, like if you met Andre the Giant in real life big. These guys are bugbears, and they have face shields, and they're pretty cool, actually. They're pretty fearsome. I wouldn't mind using these guys in HeroQuest as well. I like their design. It's pretty unique. It's more of a mob enemy, so you get more of those. These are orcs, and these orcs by rights should be goblins, but they're orcs. And since it's a pretty unconventional take on an orc, they're kind of shrimpy and stupid rather than kind of brutish and stupid. I'll allow it. It's a unique orc take. It's another mob enemy, by the way, so you'll probably find them in various quests in numbers. We've got trolls again. I'm sure the design was well intended, just probably not as much skill, but otherwise not a bad troll. Gets the message across, kind of scary, kind of peeking its head around the corner, like, who's there? You could come in with the hand first for a really dramatic entrance. Kind of looks like he's scratching his butt, though. Finally, for miniatures, we have the heroes, cast in this lovely purple. This is the male rogue. This is the female rogue. She's very small. Her details are almost nil. She's saying shh, holding a finger pressed to her lips while she sneaks, dagger held closely behind her back. This is the wizard. He's in the middle of casting a spell. He's got a cane. He's got a dagger. In his belt, he's got a pouch of something. You know, he's a pretty well-equipped wizard, but he doesn't have facial hair yet. He's just not that advanced. This is the dwarf. He doesn't look bad, as dwarves go. He's not as chunky as some of the dwarves I've seen, but he has really big hands, and I guess that counts for something. This is the elf. I have definitely seen worse elves, but I can't really remember where or when. He kind of suffers from there's a quiver on his back, but you can't really tell that that's what it is effect, just like the orcs from New HeroQuest. Next we have what's probably my favorite of all the hero sculpts for this game, and that is the barbarian. This one wears a fur cape. He's got a sheath back there. He's got a really big sword. He's got real barbaric facial features. I like him. I really do. Those are the 6 hero miniatures. Time to look at the game board, of which, again, there are 4. The 2 game boards that come with this game are double-sided, and a lot of people have used these game boards for HeroQuest homebrew stuff. The artwork on the board is just fine. I like it. I don't have a problem with it. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of stuff that might be better left to the gamers' imaginations, or stuff that you could represent by moving tiles and such around to really show where stuff is. But instead, the illustrators and the designers chose to place these game-specific elements into the hard print of the board itself, such as these acid pools. So like every adventure, these acid pools are going to play some sort of a part, or they're going to do something while they're here because they are on the board. By virtue of them existing, they now have a role every single time you play this map. There's also always going to be this elevated space here that overlooks this room, so every time you approach this room, you know that the Dragon Master is probably going to have some ranged enemies here, such as some orcs who will fire arrows down onto the heroes should they make it into this room. Now, of course, you don't have to do things that way. You can do whatever you want when it's your game, but these design conventions are just minor things that I gripe about whenever I see them, because I think the more the game lends itself to your creativity, the better the game ends up being. But play a few games while ignoring this stuff, and it will only get easier to ignore. Just like HeroQuest, you won't place elements down onto the board until your heroes can see them, so you can definitely set your heroes up for some ambushes. And of course, you can block things off with stuff like the rock tile. Now, I wouldn't use any doors in this quest specifically, or any quest that used this specific map, rather, but you could. You'll notice there are also multiple paths that come off of the board and don't necessarily go anywhere. The heroes will start in different positions depending on what quest it is, and then the context of the quest will determine whether or not this is the same place you were before or a different place. Every single board has a time tracker, and the time marker is placed, the clip is placed on the edge of the board and counts down with each turn until it gets past 1 onto the dragon, and that's when the dragon appears. The game becomes much harder with the dragon on the board, but you do have plenty of turns before that happens. Now, completing the quest before the dragon ever makes it onto the board, that's more than doable. You can do that. But if your heroes are particularly explorative, let's say, particularly slow. But I mean, yeah, that's possible. This time tracker will count down and down and down until it reaches 1, and then the dragon comes onto the board. Now, the good part is each quest has its own entry point for the dragon, so it's not always going to be like right in the heroes' faces, and they'll have a heads up on where the dragon is being placed, where he is. But sometimes they'll run into him naturally, and sometimes they just won't by virtue of completing the requirements quickly. The dragon's pretty dangerous too, a real legitimate threat. The dragon can actually open doors and has really high attack and movement as you would expect from a creature that's this fearsome. I guess it's really more like the dragon can smash through walls. The dragon also has fearsome attacks that can hit more than one hero at a time, and is generally quite difficult to take down if the heroes choose to combat it. But if the heroes do defeat the dragon, that usually ends up as a win condition, if they didn't fail the quest by that point anyway. This is the castle board. A number of quests take place in each of the 4 boards, so you get a really good feel for how the boards operate and where doors are normally placed, where rooms normally connect, how to navigate each scenario, each quest. And we have, of course, already seen the cave board, which is the opposite side of the castle board. A quick note on board folding. You'll realize that these boards fold much easier in one direction than they do the other, so just fold them in the easier direction. That will prolong the life of your spine. Both sides of the second board are a pretty hot commodity for HeroQuest players because they represent areas that just have no official representation in that game. One is the outdoor board. The outdoor board comes complete with fields and a river, forest, campfires, and some cliffs from which the heroes can dive into the water in an attempt to cross it. That's right, role-playing is encouraged in this game. That's where the speak actions and the heroic feats come into play. This board is used for one of my favorite quests in the game, which is an escort mission. You have to stand near the horse and carriage as it makes its way to its goal, and you cannot let it get attacked by enemies. And on the opposite side of the board is another one that I wish we had. On the opposite side of the outdoors board is another board I wish we had official representation for in HeroQuest, and that is this town and city scene. We get a lovely fountain right in the center of town. Lots of twisting alleyways and different paths to get into the different buildings that are represented. Just a ton of potential for role-playing and storytelling here. This scene is replete with a stable area, grassy knolls to be used for picnics or perhaps merchant stalls, purveyors of fine, rare imported items such as the Ogre Horde Pier 1 Imports carpet tile. Sure, you may need to convince the guards that your intentions are benevolent before you can enter, but prove yourself worthy and perhaps you can get some suits of armor. Now, I know, I do commonly gripe about mismatched scales with board art, and this is no exception. There are a ton of different scales used here for the art. I guess I can kind of hand wave it because it's already a game where scales are kind of all over the place, and I don't think the players will suspend their disbelief over it. When you don't really start out with any consistency, you don't have to maintain it. But still, that keeps you from being able to use pieces like custom furniture and the like without it blatantly mismatching the art on the board. I'll prove it to you. Look at this gigantic cabinet. Good luck trying to get anything off the weapons rack. What's that? You'd like a weapon? Oh, good luck lifting it. But these aren't really gripes, so much as they're just observations. I'm more happy to have this game and be able to play it than I am wanting it to follow some sort of invented convention. A lot of these boards have spaces that are really different from the HeroQuest grid tile convention as well because of the misshaped tiles, or I guess I should say the otherly shaped tiles. The tiles around the fountain, for example, go around it in circles. It's difficult to represent the circle if you are using a grid structure, 1-inch squares. It is because of this deviation from convention that we're able to travel diagonally through alleyways as well. I like it, and it's not something we see very often, so kudos to this game for pulling it off. So I'd like to run you through Quest 10 really quick, which is called The Prisoner and uses the city map. It is for 4 to 5 heroes, and the difficulty is rated at average. You have received a special message by courier. Teraptus, the evil wizard, has been captured at last. King Halvor demands that Teraptus be brought to him for punishment, and you must escort the prisoner. Teraptus is imprisoned in a magical carriage. The carriage prevents him from casting spells. Your mission is this: safely escort Teraptus through the city, leaving by the main gate. The king's royal jailers will take over from there. Guard the carriage well, for if it is harmed, Teraptus will be free. The heroes get starting treasure for this, 3 cards per hero, 4 if only 4 heroes play. Something I haven't really touched on until this point is that these quests do not have to be played in any specific order. You can actually start anywhere you want in the quest book. Thanks to the difficulty recommendations and the starting number of treasure cards to be drawn per quest, it's really easy to play these as one-shots or part of an overarching campaign. Now, the adventure book has done an excellent job of telling us where we can start our heroes, as well as outlining the conditions for the dragon to appear, and the dragon will appear in position when 10 rounds have passed or a hero attacks any ally. And by the way, here is our dragon entrance. He's going to come straight down that alley. Spoilers ahead, but you can see that there are going to be hobgoblins and orcs, as well as gargoyles who will threaten to come out and attack the carriage to free their master. As the heroes, you cannot let that happen. However, there's quite a bit more to this quest than may meet the eye. For example, as soon as the carriage loses 2 hit points, discard the carriage marker and leave Teraptus in place on the board. The carriage explodes in a cloud of dust and smoke. When the smoke clears, Teraptus stands before you, sneering. "You've carried me through the streets like an animal," he says, "and now you shall pay." Teraptus is free. If the heroes attack now, the dragon does not appear. It appears only if the heroes attack Teraptus in the carriage. If Teraptus is reduced to 1 hit point, he pleads for his life. "Wait, let's talk this over," he says. "There's no need to kill me. I surrender." He attacks no more. And, if questioned, he will agree to be escorted from the city. If the heroes escort him alive, they win, provided all heroes survive, of course. If the heroes attack Teraptus after he has surrendered, the dragon appears. At the same time, Teraptus disappears in a puff of smoke, mysteriously. There are a lot of really cool variations to where you can place monsters and stuff depending on just whatever your desire is. Meaning, if you want to, you can make this adventure different every single time you play it with a new group of heroes. Or with the same group of heroes if they're trying to re-attempt it after failing the first time. The moral of the story is, if you haven't tried Dragon Strike before, or you've just been tempted to wave it off as a cheap knockoff of games long past, you owe it to yourself to give it a try. I wouldn't give it the AshQuest seal of approval if I didn't like it immensely. And, if anything, it serves as a great resource for ideas that you can steal for your own HeroQuest homebrew. Speaking of homebrew, I didn't go over the cards, and there are a lot of them. We've got monster cards with painted examples as pictures for the front, and all the stats you could possibly ask for on the back, including flavor text. And the flavor text is something to pay attention to for roleplay purposes because you may choose to talk to some of the enemies. Most bugbears, for example, are as dumb as posts, but they can talk. This is a great opportunity for role-playing. If you are perhaps playing with kids, you can really cheese it up, give some of your monsters specific silly voices. Have them not attack the heroes, since they kind of engaged in some friendly conversation and earned each other's trust. The gargoyle! Is this a gargoyle, or is this some kind of abomination? The fire elemental. You know what, I called him silly, but I kind of take that back after seeing that paint job. We're really looking at a Zinch brimstone horror here. The man scorpion. The troll. And others. I mentioned the heroes being able to start out with treasure cards. Those come from the treasure deck. And you can get all kinds of stuff, like the Ring of Seeing, which comes with its own little tracker, so you can track how many times you've used it. This ring can be used 4 times. It lets you detect all traps and secret doors within sight. You can stand in place and scan all around. The Magic Battle Axe, dwarf only. Roll the black die, a d12 when attacking with this axe. The Magic Sword, for the warrior only. If you miss, you can immediately make a second free attack against the same target using the blue die, a d8. And the Wand of Fear, wizard only. This wand creates a wave of terror. The wave begins in any space you can see, then spreads to every adjacent space. Anyone struck can save versus magic. Those who fail must run just far enough away so you can't see them immediately. Really love the items deck here, or I guess the treasure deck. Nothing in here is really like treasure, there's no monetary system. That's something you could actually homebrew for this game. Gold pieces. Here are the Teraptus spells, and they include zingers such as Dispel Magic, Ice Storm, and True Seeing. In true tabletop dungeon crawl fashion, all of the heroes get their own reference cards that tell you exactly what their actions can be. The thief actually gets their own deck of sneak attack cards, and these are discarded once they are used. In classic D&D fashion, there are hero spells, but they are separated by level, first level, second level, and third level. First level spells include Shocking Grasp. Second level includes spells such as Invisibility, and third level spells include Fireball and Lightning Bolt. There is also a deck of trap cards. These can be used as reference cards, or you can have your heroes draw from these, having a completely different set of traps per dungeon every game. One thing I really like about the trap deck, it comes with a few cards that are pretty much mulligans. These traps won't hurt the player in any way. But there are plenty of deadly ones too. And that, brave heroes, is my unboxing and overview of Dragon Strike. This is one of my favorite tabletop dungeon crawlers, and I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to my patrons who sponsored this content. Get away from that, Cornelius. Cornelius, no!